Hi there everyone, welcome to the first Google Hangout for 2015. Today I think it's a pretty timely hangout. We've actually got one of my wonderful business mums and also a great professional organiser, Denise Childs of Systems for Order, talking about getting your kids organised for kinder and school and helping them with routines and everything else that we need to do and implement to hopefully stop ourselves from going crazy trying to get them ready for school and kinder every day, which I know I do. The reason I asked Denise is that not only has she successfully managed to get 3 kids all the way through to high school age now without throwing herself off a building somewhere. Every time I have her at my Business Mums Clubs, she's the most organised person I've ever come across in my life. So I do not doubt for a second that she is an expert in this field. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Denise and take it away, Denise.
Thanks, Ali. Thanks for having me on this Google Hangout. I hope I can share some tips with everyone today. A bit of background about me. I've got an executive secretarial background, so I've always been a bit of an organiser. And so what did I do? I worked as a PA to MD at Tupperware and also at Mitre 10, so some large corporates. And what did I do? I basically organised people, I organised conferences, I organised travel. So moving in as a professional organiser was a natural transition. So a bit more about my background. Having worked in large corporates, my husband then started his own IT firm, working from home. So I left my career to manage that office and set it up from scratch. So now I've worked in small business as well. And while I was in that small business, we had and raised our 3 boys. Our boys now are 12, 14 and 17. And my youngest is just going into high school tomorrow. So I've done the primary school, I've done the kinder. I've done 12 years of primary school and prior to that 6 consecutive years of kindergarten. So I know where you're coming from. I've done the juggle of working from home and having the kids and now trying to get them off to school and kinder. So I hope I can share some things with you today. I'm going to change over to sharing my screen now.
And just while you do that, Denise, I will remind everyone that they can ask questions. You can ask questions on the Q&A portion of Google Hangout if you're on the Google application, as long as you have as long as you're on a computer. You can't do that on a handheld. But if you are on the other link that we provided, then in the newsletter you can ask questions on that one as well, and we'll be asking those of Denise as we go along.
Okay, so welcome to Organising for Kinder and School. And a lot of what I'm going to talk about today, I talk a lot about school, but the same applies to kinder really. When I'm talking about systems and routine for school, and I talk about a school bag, a kinder bag is equally interchangeable. So if I say school a lot, it also applies to the young ones. These are my contact details now. First of all, why be organised? I mean, what's the big deal about being organised? How is it going to help you and your child settle into school? Basically, it reduces frustration and stress. You're not running around the house looking for your keys or trying to get out the door in a state of panic. It reduces embarrassment because you can have people over at the drop of a hat. It reduces effort and energy because you're not racing around the house tearing your hair out. It saves space, you maximise your space. It saves money, you're not buying things 2 and 3 times because you can't find where you put them. Most of all, it saves time, and time's a huge thing these days. But mostly, and this is what I talk about today in this hangout, is it makes everything easier, both for you and for your children. And organisation is a skill that can be learned. You know, it does come naturally to some people, but it is a skill that can be learned. And learning it now for your children and teaching your children now the organisational skills, that's really going to help them later on. So I talk about systems and routines. And you'll hear me say those words over and over and over, systems and routines, as I talk this morning. And my business name is Systems for Order, and there's a reason for that. I'm a big believer in the basis for order and organisation is getting a system right, and getting a system right that works for you. So how can you be organised, and how will it help your children? If you make it easy for your children, then it's going to make it easy for you. So if you are organised by setting up systems and routines that kids can easily follow and maintain, they can be organised by following those systems and routines, meaning you don't have to chase them, things get done, life is easier. So being organised with kids is all about creating systems, managing spaces and routine. Systems and routines can't effectively be established, though, if the house is overwhelmed with clutter and there's no system for belongings. So first you have to manage your spaces, and when managing your spaces, decluttering is always the first step. You've got to make some space to move. This is a picture of a client of mine, the before and after, which only took a few hours to change, and the base, and you can see the clutter, and that's all it is. It's not rubbish, it's just clutter. You have to be able to find things. So the first step there was we pulled all our items together. And do that with your children. Pull together their clothes, their toys maybe in one space rather than throughout the house. All their craft and stationery belongings. Anything that they own, try and establish one home for things. Not all over the house, not in 2 or 3 different places where they have to go searching, but one place. And then what is a great idea, if you can, label where those things go. Label the shelves, the drawers. It tells them where things go, and it tells you where things go. But more importantly, it tells you and your children and anybody else in the house where things don't go. So it helps maintaining any system you set up. Labelling always helps. I had a client recently who had a young girl, and her girl's bedroom was just covered in girl bits. I have boys. I don't know what girl bits are. There's lots of hair bubbles and ornaments and pretty pink things all over the dressing table. And she couldn't get the little girl to tidy, and the little girl couldn't keep her room tidy. So I asked her, I said, why can't you keep your room tidy? And she said, I don't know where things belong. And I just turned to her mother and I said, well, there you go, out of the mouths of babes. If she could find things, if she knew where things belonged, she'd be able to keep them tidy. So what's easier for a child to find what they want? Here's an example. Is it easy for them to find a toy in there? And I'm talking generally at the moment. I'm going to move on to school in a minute, but these are all the basis for school routines and systems. If the child wants to play with a farm set and the cow's buried under that toy box, guess who's going to be called to pull that cow out? It's not going to be them, or it might be them, and then they'll get frustrated, but most likely it's going to be you. So in order to save time and frustration, what's easier for the child? Make it easier for the child. Is that easier for a child to play? What's more appealing to sit down and play? You know, if they can find where things go, if they're labelled, clean-ups are much easier. There are no tantrums. They sit down quietly and play, and they can easily clean up. So a system there is established for their belongings, their toys. So make it easy for them to look after their belongings. By doing that, it makes it easy for you. So again, before we get specifically into school systems and routines, I'd like to talk about systems and routines at home you can introduce to help with school life, to help with their belongings, and to help with responsibility too. Now I've got 3 boys, so this really applies in our house. If you've got 1 boy and 1 girl, that's easy, that's pink and blue. But I know lots of families that have 2 boys, 2 girls, 3 boys, 4 girls. And colour coding can be a very useful tool, not only in helping with kids' belongings and routines, also in the office too. I often talk about using colour in the office and files, etc. But particularly for kids' belongings. When they're younger, if you've got a few kids, how easy is it to find, say your child's colour is red, how easy is it to find the red lunchbox or drink bottle? Apply it throughout the house. What about toothbrushes? What about bag tags on the school bags? Easily identifiable if you have 2 or 3 kids going to the same primary school in your house. Sticky name labels. Chore rosters as well. But also coloured folders. You could establish some coloured folders or coloured labels for school books, etc. My favourite in our house is the bath towels. My boys are red, blue and green. If Mr. Blue leaves his bath towel on the bathroom floor, I know who it is. Or if Mr. Green leaves his lunchbox on the kitchen bench and hasn't bothered to put it in the dishwasher, I know who to blame. It makes it easier for me, and the point being they know I know, so they don't do it. So think about how you can use colour throughout the house to make it easier for yourself. Even in Outlook and your calendar, if you use just a paper calendar, use different coloured pens. In Outlook, you can colour code. Quick and easy identification really does save time. Now, that's one system that you could introduce. What about, I was talking before about labelling. What about something as simple as getting your children to sort their washing before you wash them? What does that teach them? If they're very young and they can't read, of course you can use pictures. That's going to teach them colours and organisational skills. But I talk a lot now from here on in about responsibility with children. And if they're starting school, let them be responsible for their belongings. So if they come in the door at the end of the day, have a place for them to put their uniforms, have a place for them to put their dirty washing. Setting up a system. Setting up a system and a routine will make it easy for them. It'll make it easy for you. And of course, once all the washing's done, have a place in the wardrobe or the drawer where the uniforms do go. Again, they can take on that responsibility. So we've talked a bit about establishing a place for things and systems. Systems and routine go absolutely hand in hand when it comes to kids in school. So let's look at routines you can establish in the home. I think kids like routine. They like to know what they're doing in the day. I know with my boys, if I say we're going to have a quiet day at home and then I suddenly change my mind and say, no, we're out the door, they get a little bit peeved because they have their day planned. In their mind, even young kids have this rough idea of what they're going to do in the day. So I think kids thrive on routine, absolutely thrive on routine. And remember, once a routine is repeated and it gets carried out again and again with greater consistency and greater efficiency, that gives them self-confidence. And when you look at it, kinders and schools run on routine. They have to. They're all about routine. They have routines for lunchtime, reading time, lining up when the bell rings. Is it library day? What day is homework due? They also have systems in place. When you come in the door, where do you put your school bag? There is a place for school bags. Where do the return notices go? There's a place for those. So follow that example of schools and kindergartens. So what routine can you introduce at home that follows the school system? And remember, by getting your children to follow a routine, it's teaching responsibility. It's teaching them a set way of doing things. It's teaching them planning ahead. It's teaching them organisation. And they're the sort of skills learned from a very young age now. If you can instill them now, it's going to set them up for life. It's going to help them through their school years, and through study and through life. And as I mentioned before, I've got a son just starting Year 12. And I can tell you now, Year 12 is all about planning and organisation. So let's look at routines. Routines, getting in and out the door. Coming in after school. Follow the school routine. Is there a place for school bags? Do they get dumped in the kitchen? Do they get dumped in the bedroom? Or is there a place that you can find in the home where is the set school bag place, just like school? Is there a place for lunch boxes? Where do they put their bottles? Where do they put their hats? You know, swimming bags ready to go the next day. So try to establish a sort of centre where it's all the comings and goings of the house for school. Library books borrowed, you know, instead of getting them lost all over the house, make a little section for library books that they've borrowed so you remember to return them. Or more importantly, so they remember to return them. Responsibility. For young ones starting school, maybe have a little checklist pinned up near their school bag, remembering to leave in the morning with their lunchbox, with their homework, with their sports shoes, whatever they need for the day. And what might help with that is a simple little chart, and this applies to kinder and school. So, okay, say today's Monday. Oh, yes, that's right, it's library day. Must remember to take the library books. So all these little visual clues will help them get out the door, help you get out the door, much calmer and in a much easier way. Then getting ready for school, have a place where they can put these things ready for the next school day. You know, if it's sports day tomorrow, if they got their sneakers or swimming bag for their swimming lessons. Establish a place near the front door or wherever where they can lay everything so there's not a last-minute scramble. Another good idea too is when you get them to school and before you pick them up and take them home, make sure they've got everything. Children are notorious for leaving the most essential items all over school grounds. So I've just got a little picture there. Maybe have a little laminated sheet attached to a school bag. And this is for the little ones. Once they get into the routine of school, they'll remember, hopefully. And make sure they've got their jacket when they come home. And that's going to save you time because then you're not running back to school 10 minutes later because they've forgotten something. So remember again, you make it easy for them. If it's easy for them, if they've got a little checklist or a little chart or a little routine, that's going to make it easy for you and that's going to save you time and it's going to reduce your stress. Moving on to lunches. Again, I talk about responsibility. You know, let them be responsible for, if not making their lunch, then assembling their lunch. And how can you do that? You could make make everything accessible, I guess is what I'm saying again, like I talked about before. Make their home for things. So maybe have a lunch tub in the pantry or the cupboard that's got all the quick grab things, the juice boxes, the sultana packs, things like that, so they can start assembling the lunch themselves. Maybe have a bit of a reminder, you know, grab a drink or a water bottle, grab a piece of fruit, make the fruit bowl accessible on the table where they can reach it. If you have muffins or cakes, rather than having them perhaps on the bench in a tub, individually wrap them and keep them in the freezer. And same with biscuits. Instead of a bit awkward for little kids with packets of biscuits they've got to open, on a Sunday afternoon, pre-Ziploc 2 or 3 biscuits in each little bag and have them ready as quick grab. So they can go to the fridge, grab the fruit, the drink, they can go to the pantry and grab the cake, and they've assembled the lunch themselves. I've got a friend of mine who, very busy corporate people, so on a Sunday afternoon they'd make all the sandwiches for the week, luncheon meat, cheese, Vegemite, whatever, and freeze them individually in the freezer. So again, all the kids had to do was go to 2 or 3 different places, quick grab, and they've assembled their lunch. And maybe even, if it helps, rather than doing that first thing in the morning, if you don't like the idea of frozen sandwiches and things, maybe while you're preparing dinner that night, have a place where they can start assembling their fruit, their snacks, their drinks, and put it in a tub and put that solely in the fridge. And label it lunches. So next thing in the morning, while you're making the sandwiches maybe, they can quickly be grabbing the tub out of the freezer, or the fridge, sorry, packing it into their school bag. Anything that's going to save a bit of time and going to take a bit of effort away from what you're doing. So while we're talking about meals, let's talk about witching hour. And I hope you all know what I mean by witching hour. It can also be referred to as peak hour or feral hour. I had a friend who's got 3 boys and she called it arsenic hour. But it's basically that time of day when everything starts to happen. It's when everyone comes home, school bags get dropped, and it doesn't matter what time of day it is, whether it's 3:30 or 6 o'clock when people come in from kinder or after school care or wherever. But it's that time of day where everything happens and it's a little bit crazy. And baths have to be run, readers have to be read, and homework has to be done. So try to get some systems and routines going that deal with that witching hour, because you know it's going to hit at the same time every day. So try and set up some systems so children take responsibility for their belongings and their chores, and have a routine to follow. And I should say that with witching hour, my 17-year-old, our kids are teenagers. We still have witching hour. So the earlier you can establish a routine to get through that time, the much easier it is. Of course, I'm not wiping faces anymore or cutting up afternoon tea, but it's still the same thing. Showers have to be run, homework to be done. It's still that crazy time. So anything that makes that time of day a little bit easier, get a routine going, that's going to make your life a little bit easier. So what's going to help with that? Maybe have a chart for the chores that your children can do after school. Have a schedule, perhaps, to introduce. A basic one for the young ones, you know, reading time. Reader time is 4 to 4:30, something like that. Start getting a little schedule going so the kids can anticipate what their day is going to be through that witching hour and into the evening. And then make it easy for yourself, because during this time of day, you're probably trying to get dinner on the table too, while dealing with homework, etc. So what's going to make it easy for you to get dinner on the table every night? If you have an organised pantry, that helps. If you know where things are, if there is a place for things, you can easily see what you've got. You can easily see what you're out of for shopping lists, and you can easily get a meal together quickly if you can clearly and accurately see what you've got. An organised fridge also is very handy. You could keep a separate section allocated in the fridge for leftovers that you can quickly whip something up, or an allocated section in the fridge for meal preparation if you're planning a few meals for the week and you've got your special ingredients in there. Keep them in a separate section so the family knows that's for a meal and they're not going to eat a part of it that you need for a meal. And something that's really handy that we find extremely useful in our household is a freezer list. And it's just a list detailing the contents of the freezer. Now that helps with meal planning because you can look and see what you've got. And it's an accurate list, and it's not, it gets to the end of the day and you open up your freezer and you see this little mess of brown something and you're not too sure what it is. So if you have a freezer list, that's going to help with your meal planning as well and keep it up to date. I'm going to move on to paperwork because this seems to be an issue that is constantly mentioned, whether it be with mothers, working mothers, business people. People are drowning in paper. And I'll tell you, my experience has been that schools will drown you in paper. There are excursion forms to fill out and return. There are incursion forms to fill out and return. Enrolment forms, medical forms. Seems to be never ending, particularly this time of year when you're starting. So the kids are going to bring home, and Kinder as well, of course, newsletters as well. The kids are going to be bringing home papers and notices constantly throughout the year. So how can you make sure that they're not going to get lost or buried at the bottom of the school bag? Again, establish a place where they can go. When they come home, establish a place where they can be put. And also, when they're leaving school, you know, on their little laminated tag, you could have notice, so they remember to bring any notices from school. And then perhaps your child could put them in a special pocket in their school bag. It could be the notices pocket. So they could remember to put it in there, and even if they get home and get excited and get distracted, you remember to go to that specific pocket and you know that's where their notices will be. So it's again establishing a place for things. But when they come in the door, where are they going to put all these notices if they remember to get them out of their school bag? Are they going to dump them on the kitchen bench, or could there be a place, a tray or somewhere where they could go? And then what are you going to do with it? This is not uncommon. This is what I call a black hole. I call it a black hole because I don't know what's in there. I don't know if there's a form I haven't filled in, an invitation I haven't responded to. There might be an excursion in there that I don't know about. So is there a way to better manage all the notices that come home from school rather than dumping them in a general household file? And I call that the vertical black hole. That's the same. You know, there isn't a dedicated spot on that fridge for excursion notices or the timetable, etc. So what can you use? And I'm going to put up a picture about a tickler file because it's easier than explaining it totally. A tickler file, and this is a very traditional file, it consists of 31 suspender files and then 12 months of the year, so 12 more suspender files. And the reason I'm showing you this is quite elaborate for home, but there are other ways, other adaptations to it. But the principle is the same. Any paperwork that you get in, say it's an excursion notice, there's always at the bottom that you've got to fill in your permission. So that gets taken back to the school. Hopefully it doesn't get lost in the school bag. Then you've got that very important piece of paper that has the date, the time, all the details that you need to know. You need to be able to retrieve that ready for the excursion. So where does that go? If it gets put on the fridge, maybe it'll be overlooked. But you have a place for it. If you have a system, something like this, it's a very effective paper retrieval system. So if the excursion, say, is on the 3rd, you'd put the piece of paper in the 3rd. And come the 3rd morning, you would check it, you'd pull out the details, and you'd know everything you needed to know for that day. I won't go into great detail about that. And obviously, it's if you finish the month, if you get to the 31st, then you take whatever the documents are in the next month and you shuffle them through to the relevant days. So that's one way of dealing with the paperwork that comes in. But there are other ways as well. You know, plastic pockets, if you're a visual person, are very effective. It could be like the fridge, but it's subcategorized, really, isn't it? It's sort of in front of you, but yet it's allocated to a date. Another great way, and I've used this occasionally too, is using a folder, a simple folder with plastic pockets. Not 1 to 31 for the current month. You've got the excursion notice in the 3rd. You've got some other forms that are due back on the 12th. The point being with these files, or this particular retrieval system, is that there's only one place for things. It's not on your desk. It's not in the bottom of the school bag. It's in that particular place. And go further on from that, a terrific idea, particularly if your kids are starting school now or very soon, is to establish a reference file. At this time of year, you get told who the teachers are, you find out the kids' classmates, parent phone numbers for play dates. So start assembling them into, say, a binder. Keep uniform shop details here, the names of all the class coordinators. In high school that applies. Maybe even the canteen order list, the menu. And then keep with it the paper bags and the change. So that becomes the school reference file for everybody in the house. Anything they need to know is there. So if it comes to canteen day, your child goes to one place, gets out the paper bag, looks at the menu, writes it up, puts the money in. Another great idea to keep there is all the details that you fill out in forms at the beginning of every year, and you'll do it over and over and over and over again. They will ask for immunisation details, medical details, Medicare number, phone numbers, emergency contacts, etc. Keep a copy of that in that reference file because it saves you going searching for that at this time next year and the year after and the year after. You could also keep in this reference file bike lock combinations for when the kids forget them, or locker combinations, so you've got the master list, if you like. Often schools have website logins. Keep a note of what the login is there. Perhaps even a hard copy of the school calendar, so you've got a quick reference there at all times. And the point being, of course, it's one place and it's got everything in it and it's easily accessible for you and your child. This next section is more about kinder, I suppose. I remember with kinders for my boys, I would happily send along all my tissue boxes and cereal boxes and get them out of the house, and they would come back the next day in a wonderful construction that I then had to store. And then I get another one the next day. So if you're struggling with space and you're getting more and more of these wonderful creations, but you don't have room for them, how do you get rid of them? Oh, sorry, I shouldn't say that. What should we do with them? You could try the one in, one out, and that's a real basic decluttering sort of essential item too, is when you're decluttering, when you buy something new, get rid of something old. Use that with the artwork or with the kinder constructions, and that can be really effective in talking to your children about, oh great, we've got this new one, well maybe it's time for this next one to go, this old one to go. If they're not too keen on that idea, try taking a photo of the construction with them standing next to it. And then you could start an album in your spare time because you've got heaps of that. But then over the years, if you keep them even digitally, you can see how the constructions grow and how the children go with them. And they're a lovely little keepsake. And it means with all their artwork, you don't have to physically keep it, but you keep a record of it that doesn't take up much room. And I think plastic tubs are fantastic too for keeping artwork and things like that. You know, you're going to get a heap of it through the year. If you don't have room in the house, you know, maybe you find space in the attic or in a shed or garage or somewhere. Plastic tubs keep them nice and safe and protected from, you know, bugs and mice and wet and all the rest. So maybe just throw it all in there through the year, and at the end of the year, go through it with your child and just keep a sample and maybe make a portfolio out of that. Or if you want to keep the whole lot, they're happily kept in a plastic tub in the shed where you don't have to find really valuable storage space in the house for them. And then school opens up a whole heap of keepsake opportunities. You get Student of the Week certificates, you get newsletters that you want to keep because it's got your child's photo in it, school reports, projects and more homework. So how do you keep those? Maybe you keep a binder, you know, for all the wonderful certificates they're going to get, encouragement certificates they get throughout the year. Hole punch them and put them in a binder or in plastic sleeves in a binder. Maybe you make a little keepsake box for all those badges and sports ribbons and those bulkier things. Keep them in a colour-coded box for your child's colour and a colour-coded binder. But keep them in one place so that your child can easily look through them and relive happy memories. Then I want to talk about managing desk space and homework, because this is an issue that you're going to come across as the years go on. What's going to make it easy and attractive for your children to do their homework? Having a place clear of clutter is always going to be a lot more appealing. If you look at that picture there, that's difficult. Visual clutter can distract. So as the children want to settle down to their homework, if they've got to sweep off a heap of clutter or stuff or previous homework, that's just going to distract them from sitting down and getting start to their homework. And that applies also to, you know, real littlies when they've got their own little drawing table and chair with their coloured pencils. Same thing applies. If you want to get them, if they want to happily sit down and make a drawing, it's a bit hard if they have to sweep off a heap of other things first. So try and make the working space attractive and appealing. Make it so they want to go there. For young ones, or for any of them really, try and separate personal and work. So anything personal, toys or play, and anything work-related being homework or study, try and separate them so they're not visually in the eye and they're not physically in the same area. So maybe establish a homework zone away from the play area. Have everything to hand, have all their stationery and school needs or all their coloured pencils and rubbers, whatever it be, easy to hand. So it makes it easy for them to sit down and do what they want to do. Make it pleasant, make it attractive, make them want to sit there. You know, get them into a routine where they clear their desk at the end of every night. So next day they want to sit there. So keep it uncluttered, keep it clear, and make it their place. You know, if they can have their own established work area, that makes study all a little bit easier as well. You could also establish a school resource zone. It's probably, if you've got a child starting prep, it's probably not such a big deal to start. But as the years go on, you often have the leftovers from the previous year, leftover coloured pencils and stationery, expensive textbooks, exercise books. I think we had a stack of about 20 packets of reinforced refills carry over from previous years. So that's going to save you money if you know what you've got as leftovers. So if you can establish a school resource zone somewhere in the house, you know, one place, one cupboard, one shelf, whatever it is, of all the collected coloured pencils, of all the collected bits and pieces, that helps stock control next time you do your book list, and it makes it easy for kids through the year to find their school supplies if they run out. There's an example of a nice, clean, clear homework zone. That is not our house, but we had a not dissimilar situation. We have 3 bedrooms for the boys, but up until just under a year ago, all the boys shared one room. So we decided to allocate zones in our house, which worked very well, and that's a picture of one zone there. I believe in dedicated rooms or dedicated spaces for dedicated purposes. I think it's a very efficient way to do things, which is why I'm talking about a school resource zone, etc. So in our house, as an example, as an anecdote, our 3 boys were in the same bedroom all these years. That was their dormitory, that was their barracks. That was their beds, their bedside tables, and their clothes. That then freed up a bedroom to make a playroom, a play zone. So that's where they could spread out their 10,000 pieces of Lego, and I could leave it like that and close the door, because that was their play area, not toys throughout the house. We then set up the 3rd bedroom as a study zone, and that worked very effectively because it was the quiet zone. That was the zone where all the school resources were, where the desks were, the chairs were, they had their own space, and that's where they went to do their homework. And nothing else infringed on that space. So again, keeping the zones separate made them focus, because the only purpose of that room was for homework or reading. So if you want to think about your spaces in terms of zones, that can be a really efficient way of handling things. So when you're talking about your homework in your desk area, look at a routine. Maybe have a chart for homework. Again, for the littlies, it could be a little picture and times, a time for readers, maybe a dedicated, allocated time for computer time. And then at the end of the day, packing up ready for school time. You know, clear your desk for the next day, pack your school bag, etc. And for older kids, as they get more and more homework, I think probably homework and assignments start about grade 3, they start getting homework where they have to do a bit each day towards an end result 3 weeks later. Now that can be quite overwhelming for young ones. So helping them break a task down is all about organisation too. It's like when you're decluttering, you break it down bit by bit by bit. Homework gets broken down, and that particularly can help kids when they get into the older years. They've got so much homework they don't know where to start. So breaking it down for them, finding a starting point. And that's actually what I do with most of my clients. They're surrounded by clutter, we break it down into tasks, we find a starting point. And that can be a real help when kids are starting out with homework, being overwhelmed with what they have to do. Make it easy for them. break it down and show them that it's not such a big task, that it is easy for them. Now, just rounding up on a few things, school also offers all sorts of events and excursions, and then of course you've got school holidays. So for excursions again, look at responsibility. Let your children get ready for the excursions. Let them get their water bottle, their packed lunch, because you've made that easy for them. And it's usually in a named plastic bag. Again, make it easy for them. Pre-label the plastic bags. Have a place for the pre-labelled Ziploc bags. So when it comes to excursion day, they grab a pre-labelled bag and they put whatever they want into it. They also have their excursion notice, because you know exactly where that is, because you've got a system for that notice. And let the child read the notice and be responsible for assembling the rain jacket or whatever it is they need for the day. And then holidays. I find holidays interesting. You spend all term getting into a routine and getting very organised, and then you have 2 weeks holiday and you get out of routine again. So why get out of routine? Keep the routine going. If you have a certain time of day for readers or homework, keep that going. If you've got outings with the family and you need to pack a lunch, let them pack their lunch and let them organise and take responsibility for that. Check their clothes the night before like they do for uniforms. Particularly lunches. I used to find that I was busy and you know, you've got lots of things to do on school holidays. And I'd get involved in something and then they'd want lunch and I'd have to stop what I'm doing to make them lunch. So we got into a routine where we kept the school routine going. We would make lunches in the morning. They would put them in their lunch boxes and their drink bottle, and that would stay on the kitchen bench rather than in their school bag. So if they got hungry for their sandwich at recess time, mid-morning, they could help themselves to it. Excuse me. But basically it was, there's your day's lunch allocation, come and see me at dinner. And they could just organise their day as they wanted. And of course you're going to get unexpected events through school. You know, there are going to be days that pop up last minute. But try and get into the rhythm of the school. You know, the school probably has a sports day and your child is probably in a house with house colours. So you know they're going to be in that house for a number of years. So stock up on house colours, ribbons and face paint and streamers and things like that. If it's in the middle of winter and football, maybe there's a footy day. You know what your team is. Get your uniform ready for that. There's all these sorts of things that come through schools that you can sort of get a feel for what's going to come up and be prepared for in advance. So it's about making it easy for the children. And think back to what I said about my client's daughter when she said, I don't know where things go. Turn that around. Turn it around so your children can say, I do know where things go. And they go here, I know, because there's a label there and we've established where they go. So you make it easy for them. So being organised is all about making it easy. Getting organised for school and kinder is all about planning. It's getting into the rhythm of the school. It's about making it easy for yourself by making it easy for your children. And your children can support you in this. Reduces your stress and it saves you time. And that is me. And Ellie, well, I'll just mention that I have a Facebook page. Obviously, I have a website. And I also have a newsletter that you may care to sign up to. If you do, then I send you my little freebie booklet of 20 systems to maintain order in the family. So that may just touch on what I've spoken about today. I've recently loaded onto my website my first blog on my Back to School series. And I've also been doing a newsletter with my Back to School series, so you might find some little snippets in those as well. I do Skype consulting that I haven't put up there on the screen. My website will explain a lot more about my services, and I do public speaking and run workshops on running the home and family and setting up an efficient home office. And I've recently been working with 3 other professional ladies, and we have established a half-day workshop that's aimed very much at the motivating mum ladies, the women who work from home or women who are mothers and work. And it's called Health, Wealth, Productivity and Beauty. And it's 4 speakers in an afternoon workshop on how to make your life, firstly, or make your home office actually, firstly more efficient. And that's where I come in, talking about systems for efficiency and productivity. Then we have a Feng Shui specialist who talks on arranging your home office for prosperity and success. We have an interior decorator talk on how to make your workspace a lot more beautiful and a lot more pleasurable to work in, similar to what I was talking about your child's study space. And then finally, we have a dietitian and nutritionist talk about your health and your well-being and managing dieting and health working from home. So they're my workshops that I run on a regular basis. Now, I think Ali had put up on the promotion for this hangout about my Brainstorm and Get Started package, which is my real basic package, which is a consulting where I can just give people ideas on how to get started on their decluttering or setting up systems at home. But I also have a package for parents that I've established, which is really all about what I've been talking about today, routines and systems and what you can introduce at home. And it's a visit to your home or a Skype consultation talking about what works for you at the moment with your children, what doesn't work, and I provide an action plan. Now, I have that package for parents that is on my website. If anyone is interested, you can email me or contact me about further detail. But Ali, I thought as a special for today that any motivating mum who's interested in that package for parents, I'd offer 10% discount if they want to book it through. So if anyone is interested in more, please contact me. But I think, Ali, I might exit this, go back to full screen, and if there's any questions perhaps.
Yes, definitely. If anyone has the last question for Denise, and while they're putting those questions up, Denise, I just thought you might want to answer what kind of ages, would you be thinking of for kids when they're starting, and like when they get to year 11 or year 12, do you kind of, allocate less jobs and stuff so that they can dedicate more to school?
Yeah, look, I think I'm a huge believer in getting kids young as started on responsibility and organisation as young as possible. And if they can't read, if they're 2 or 3, they can still take their little socks off and put them somewhere. You know, they can still take their reader and put it by the bedside table or wherever it belongs. So start them on little things, and then you'll see that as they go through, they can take on more and more responsibility. And again, as I've been talking about, you just make it easy for them. You know, in any way you can to make it easy for them to sit down and do their homework or sit down and focus or help around the house, you'll get a feel for it. And again, follow the cues of kindergarten and school. Look at kindergarten, how they're made to pack up their toys at the end of every session. You know, and there is snack time and lunchtime, and you have to put your plate on the trolley or wherever it is at kinder. You know, there's all those little things. And yes, you're right, Ali, once they get up to year 11 and 12, you have to adapt your routine. But having said that, all through the years of childhood, you adapt your systems and routines constantly because things are constantly changing. You know, what works, we had a place for school bags, as you saw in that picture. We don't have that anymore. That doesn't work for us anymore. Something else replaces it. Something else is just as efficient. But when you get to year 11, 12, yes, so perhaps they need to dedicate their evenings to study, so they do their jobs first thing in the morning, and that's you allocate them easy jobs that they can do in the morning, so they're still contributing to the house and taking on responsibility, but it's not going to cut into their homework time.
And also, sorry, one other thing that just occurred to me as well, are you able to help parents who have children who, say, have disabilities or learning disabilities to adapt their routines and things like that so that those kind of kids can be involved as well? Are you able to do that sort of thing?
Yeah, and I think I've had a number of clients who've had children on the autism scale, and that routine is, I believe, a huge thing for those children. And I think routines always make it easier, because maybe if they are it takes a little bit longer for them to learn and to pick things up, having a routine and that consistency is always going to make it easier for them because they're going to get used to it. So yes.
Great. Well, we haven't had any other questions, but I'm pretty sure that's because it was very self-explanatory and you really took us through it well. If anyone does have any other questions, I'm sure Denise would be happy if you popped a question on her Facebook page later and she'll answer it for you. And also, obviously, people will be watching this during the week as well, catching up. So again, if you have a question for Denise, feel free to pop it on her Facebook page then. And firstly, Denise, thank you so much. There were definitely some things I took away from that. Maybe not quite so much yelling in the mornings from me, if I can get these tips set up. So thanks very much, Denise. That was great.
Pleasure, Ali. Thank you so much for allowing me to run the Hangout. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you. And as always, big thank you to Anita, my Google Hangout gal, who basically runs everything for me. So she puts together the newsletters, she sends them out, she does the training with Denise and the other speakers on actually being on the Hangout, and is my tech support during the session. So if anyone is interested in learning how to do their own Google Hangouts or want someone to manage them for them, then I can definitely recommend Anita. She's amazing. I wouldn't even be able to get on them half the time if it wasn't for her. So thank you, Anita.
Thank you.
And just lastly, for everyone else, I do have all of the 2014 Google Hangouts packaged now in one sort of big 7-hour session that you can obviously watch at any time and pop in and out. But I have popped that up on my business Facebook page, which is Motivating Mum Oz, and it's about 7 hours worth, and it's $9.99. Those Hangouts cover everything from making a healthy income from your business, creating visual marketing that stands out, how to use LinkedIn well for business, developing partnerships with other businesses, and it's got great speakers like Taryn Brumfit from Body Image Movement and Julia Bickerstaff of the Business Bakery. So, I mean, it's just perfect. You can just buy the series, dip in and out whenever you need them or whatever you decide that you want to learn about that topic, and for $9.99 it's pretty much a bargain. So pop on over to my Facebook page if you're interested in getting that. And the next session is going to be with Denise Hall of The Entrepreneurial Mother. She'll be talking about basically setting your business up so it's saleable, and so that if you ever do decide to leave the business, you can actually make some money from it, and how to make sure that you can do that in the best way. So she's a fantastic speaker and really definitely someone that's very good to listen into, and we'll be sending out details on that one. So until then, it's been lovely having you all, and thanks a lot to Denise and Anita, and we'll catch you all later. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to me. If you think that you would love to know when my next video comes out, you can. Just subscribe here or here or here or down there or somewhere around here. You'll see the subscribe button. Hope to see you again. Bye.